Hello, and welcome to your Week 10 lecture in Healthcare Management Leadership. The topic of today's lecture is situational leadership. And because I feel so strongly that you need to understand this topic in depth, I am going to probably require a couple different videos, narrations to do this. I'll break them up. First discussing the follower side of situational leadership, as well as the overall context about situational leadership. And then we will address the leadership side of situational leadership and the behaviors that leaders use in order to do this style of leadership. So the general notion behind situational leadership is that leaders match their style to the competence and commitment of their subordinates. This is a notion that looks at situations and how leaders adapt their style. And by style, we mean the pattern of both directive and supportive behaviors that a leader uses to attempt, at least, to influence others, if not to influence others. So it's very focused on context. It's very focused on situational contingencies, and then how the leader needs to respond and adapt their style to the individual specific needs of the follower in those leadership moments. This approach assumes that subordinates will vacillate along a developmental continuum of competence and commitment, and we'll address that a little bit more shortly. But leader effectiveness under this approach depends on first assessing the subordinate's developmental position. So what is their competence? What is their commitment? And then adapting his or her leadership style to match that developmental level. And I will show you how this all comes together. But the key concept here is that it requires a great degree of flexibility among leaders. Leaders really need to be able to change how they're doing things and not just use a cookie cutter simple approach at all times. This is one that is an approach that's a little bit more demanding of leaders, but one that has, at least in my opinion, a great potential to influence others for good, for better performance in the organization, to have better outcomes at the leadership level, as well as to have better outcomes within individuals that are followers. And again, the two main concepts here that we're going to deal with are leader behaviors, which will be the second lecture. But right now, we will talk specifically about follower readiness. Now, there's a slight difference here between performance and readiness. The two go together. Performance really can be broken up into consistency and quality. So is the performance more episodic, or are they performing pretty much the same way continually? And then is that episodic or continual consistency either of a high quality or low quality? And it's often going to vary depending on the individual, depending on sometimes the week or the day that they're performing in. But really what it comes down to is when there is a low level of performance, then the leader role is higher, and when there's a higher level of performance, then the leader role is much lower. And this goes along with the concept of readiness. So performance is what they're actually doing. Readiness is the degree of demonstrated ability and willingness to accept, own, and perform a specific task or activity. Readiness does not necessarily equate with performance. They might be ready and not performing, and that's a whole other situation. But these two concepts are important to bear in mind in their distinctions and their differences. So let's talk specifically about readiness now. Readiness can be further broken down, as we talked about earlier, into competence and commitment. Competence is about knowledge, experience, and skill. So it's what they know how to do, what they have done, what they are doing. That's competence. Commitment is different. This is less of a skill than it is a behavioral component to performance. And so Commitment is about confidence. They can do it. They believe they can do it. Willingness that they will do it, and the motivation side of things that they want to. So you can think of this as the motivational side of things, the behavioral side of things, as opposed to competence, which is about skill and ability and learn knowledge. And you have to separate the two because it becomes critical to the assessment of whether they are performing or not. If it's related to a competence issue or a commitment issue, that will determine how you approach the situation. Now, some specific hints about readiness as we get into this a little bit further. One is to be specific to the activity, the task, the function, the job, the objective, the goal. The more specific and targeted you can be, the more you can really focus in on what you need to do. If you're shooting at a big target, you're just shooting a shotgun and you may or may not hit things that are important. But if you're specific, you're narrowed in, you have a very specific target. It's the rifle approach versus the shotgun approach, and it can be much more effective. The second hint is to focus on demonstrated skills, not the things that this individual should be doing or used to do, but what they can do or are doing. People get caught up when they read into what people should be doing or what they used to be able to do. Followers change, their motivations change, their abilities change, life changes on them. It's important that you not compare them to what you think they should be doing or what you feel like they used to be doing. It's about taking the person right here, right now. So the question is not can they, but rather are they? Not can they, but rather are they? Are they right now doing this? And that's where your assessment comes in. Some more hints. Respond to follower need versus want. Don't confuse enthusiasm for ability. Again, motivation is different than competence. Commitment is different than competence. Avoid diagnosing insecurities as a lack of motivation. Sometimes people just get paralyzed because they are afraid to fail, or they are so new to the task that they are not sure if they can do it the right way, and they're just uncomfortable or insecure about it. They very much want to perform. They want to be high performers. They want to be seen as some of your best employees, but they may feel there is a chance for failure, or that there'll be consequences if they do it wrong, and that's driving their insecurity rather than their actual motivation. And then your last hint is that impacting knowledge doesn't guarantee skill. So just teaching somebody something doesn't mean that they're going to be good at it. Sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it takes coaching. You can teach somebody how to throw a football. It doesn't mean that they can throw a football 50 yards downfield in tight coverage and not throw an interception. Very, very different approach. You can put a spreadsheet in front of somebody and they can pick up and read the numbers, but they may not be able to be very skillful in manipulating it or picking out key components of it that they need to understand for their job and make decisions off of. And so simple knowledge is not necessarily skill. All right, quickly through the developmental phases. The first phase is called readiness or development 1. So sometimes you'll see it referred to as R1 or D1. I use D1. I use the development side in my approach and my perspective. And here what you have is high commitment but low competence. This is think about somebody who's new to a job, somebody who's just been hired. They're very excited. They may bring skills and abilities with them, but for your specific organization, your specific function, they might not be as competent as they need to be. So usually this is a lower competence, but a very high commitment. So they are either unable or unwilling or insecure. So what you might see here is they're not performing tasks to an acceptable level. They may be intimidated by a task. They may be unclear about directions or procrastinating. There may be unfinished tasks. They may have lots of questions about tasks. Sometimes you'll see avoidance or passing the buck or defensiveness or discomfort. When you see those sort of things, this is where you need to start thinking. Is their commitment high? Well, perhaps, yeah. And if it is, then is their competence low? Sure. Then they're in a developmental 1 phase, and that's how you would diagnose it. So look at these qualities, think about these, and then look to commitment and competence, and then you know how to assess the follower situation. Now, this is different from the D2 level, the development 2 level, where they are unable, they still have low competence, or they're gaining their competence, but they are, but they're at least willing, and again that they have some competence. So there may be some anxiety here or some excitement. They may seem interested and responsive to specific instructions or tasks. They may be more engaged, starting to demonstrate a moderate amount of ability. They're more receptive to input. They're attentive. They're enthusiastic, and there's even with new tasks, there might just be no experience. But the trick is while they are gaining competence and learning the jobs that you have them assigned to do, their commitment tends to drop off. They bring all that energy in to start the job, and then they drop off as they realize all the things they still have yet to know. And it can be a very overwhelming feeling, and so their commitment drops often very low, and then it needs to be built back up through the next developmental stages. So D3 is able but unwilling or secure. So now they're getting competence, but they're still becoming more secure. Maybe this is they're getting ready for being on their own, or taking more responsibility, being solo on some projects or tasks. They may still lack confidence or experience, and they're going to still need feedback and encouragement. They've previously demonstrated knowledge and skill in this area, so their competence is growing still. Their commitment is increasing because they're feeling more confident in their ability to do what they're doing. And if there is performance, you see performance slipping here, then maybe they're upset about things on or off the job. So there may still be some motivational aspects underlying there if they're struggling. But again, this is the notion of their commitment is starting to raise up, their competence is starting to raise up. Maybe not ready to be entirely self-sufficient yet, but they are getting close. Now, the final stage, the developmental 4 stage, is where they're able, willing, and confident. So they're consistently performing at high standards. They can operate autonomously or fairly autonomously. They're committed to and enjoy their tasks. They keep boss informed of task progress, and they share both good and bad news. They don't withhold because they're not fearful. So their commitment is now high again, and their competence is high. And this graphically is what it looks like. So when they start at D1, their commitment is very high. They're new to the job. They're very excited. And it's not just when they're newly hired, it's maybe a new responsibility or a new task or new project, right? Their competence is often low. They may not have all the skills they need for the job or the knowledge, but their commitment can be very high, the motivational aspect. The commitment drops off in the next stage in D2 while competence starts to build. So they're getting better in their competence over time. At least it should be a fairly clear trajectory that they're getting better at the actual skill level, knowledge level, performance level aspects of the job. The commitment is, again, the motivational side of things, and so it's going to drop off a little bit as they feel like they still have so much to learn and maybe a little bit overwhelmed, and then they become more and more committed as they get better at the job. They gain more competence, gives them more confidence, and that contributes to their commitment to the job until they are high performing. And that is the end of our initial discussion about follower readiness. We are now going to have a second video about leader behaviors, and then we'll discuss how these two concepts come together.